Lee Jun-fan, known professionally as Bruce Lee, was a Hong Kong-American actor, martial artist, philosopher, filmmaker, and founder of the martial art Jeet Kune Do.Lee was the son of Cantonese opera star Lee Hoi-Chuen. He is widely considered by commentators, critics, media, and other martial artists to be one of the most influential martial artists of all time, and a pop culture icon of the 20th century. He is often credited with helping to change the way Asians were presented in American films. Lee was born in Chinatown, San Francisco on November 27, 1940 to parents from Hong Kong and was raised in Kowloon with his family until his late teens. He was introduced to the film industry by his father and appeared in several films as a child actor. Lee moved to the United States at the age of 18 to receive his higher education at the University of Washington, at Seattle, and it was during this time that he began teaching martial arts. His Hong Kong and Hollywood-produced films elevated the traditional Hong Kong martial arts film to a new level of popularity and acclaim, sparking a surge of interest in Chinese martial arts in the West in the 1970s. The direction and tone of his films changed and influenced martial arts and martial arts films in the United States, Hong Kong and the rest of the world. He is noted for his roles in 5 feature-length films: Lo Vi's The Big Boss and Fist of Fury, Golden Harvest's Way of the Dragon, directed and written by Lee, Golden Harvest and Warner Brothers Enter the Dragon, and The Game of Death, both directed by Robert Clouse. Lee became an iconic figure known throughout the world, particularly among the Chinese, as he portrayed Chinese nationalism in his films. He trained in the art of Wing Chun and later combined his other influences from various sources, in the spirit of his personal martial arts philosophy, which he dubbed Jeet Kune Do. Lee held dual nationality of Hong Kong and the United States. He died in Kowloon Tong on July 20, 1973 at the age of 32. Early life. Bruce Lee was born on November 27, 1940, at the Chinese Hospital in San Francisco's Chinatown. According to the Chinese zodiac, Lee was born in both the hour and the year of the dragon, which according to tradition is a strong and fortuitous omen. Bruce's father, Lee Hoi-Chuen, was Han Chinese, and his mother, Grace Ho, was of half Chinese and half Caucasian descent. Grace Ho was the adopted daughter of Ho Kiam Tong and the half-niece of Sir Robert Ho Tung, both notable Hong Kong businessmen and philanthropists, and was reportedly a half-German Catholic. Bruce was the 4th child of 5 children: Phoebe Lee, Agnes Lee, Peter Lee, and Robert Lee. Lee and his parents returned to Hong Kong when he was 3 months old. Names: Lee's Cantonese birth name was Lee Jun-fan. The name homophonically means "return again," and was given to Lee by his mother, who felt he would return to the United States once he came of age. Because of his mother's superstitious nature, she had originally named him Siphone, which is a feminine name meaning small phoenix. The English name Bruce is thought to have been given by the hospital attending physician, Dr. Mary Glover. Lee had 3 other Chinese names: Li Yuangsun, a family clan name; Li Yuanjan, which he used as a student name while he was attending LaSalle College; and his Chinese screen name Li Xiaolong. Lee's given name Jun-fan was originally written in Chinese as, however, the Jun Chinese character was identical to part of his grandfather's name, Li Jun-biu. Hence, the Chinese character for Jun in Lee's name was changed to the homonym instead, to avoid naming taboo in Chinese tradition. family. Lee's father, Lee Hoi-Chuen, was one of the leading Cantonese opera and film actors at the time, and was embarking on a year-long opera tour with his family on the eve of the Japanese invasion of Hong Kong. Lee Hoi-Chuen had been touring the United States for many years and performing at numerous Chinese communities there. Although many of his peers decided to stay in the United States, Lee Hoi-Chuen returned to Hong Kong after Bruce's birth. Within months, Hong Kong was invaded and Lee lived for 3 years and 18 months under Japanese occupation. After the war ended, Lee Hoi-Chuen resumed his acting career and became a more popular actor during Hong Kong's rebuilding years. Lee's mother, Grace Ho, was from one of the wealthiest and most powerful clans in Hong Kong, the Ho-Tungs. She was the half-niece of Sir Robert Ho-Tung, the Eurasian patriarch of the clan. As such, the young Bruce Lee grew up in an affluent and privileged environment. Despite the advantage of his family's status, the neighborhood in which Lee grew up became overcrowded, dangerous, and full of gang rivalries due to an influx of refugees fleeing Communist China for Hong Kong, at that time a British Crown colony. After Lee was involved in several street fights, his parents decided that he needed to be trained in the martial arts. Lee's first introduction to martial arts was through his father, from whom he learned the fundamentals of Wu-style Tai Chuan. Wing Chun. The largest influence on Lee's martial arts development was his study of Wing Chun. Lee began training in Wing Chun when he was 16 years old under the Wing Chun teacher Yip Man in 1957. After losing several fights with rival gang members, Yip's regular classes generally consisted of the forms practice, Kai Sao drills, wooden dummy techniques, and free sparring. There was no set pattern to the classes. Yip tried to keep his students from fighting in the street gangs of Hong Kong by encouraging them to fight in organized competitions. After a year into his Wing Chun training, most of Yip Man's other students refused to train with Lee after they learned of his mixed ancestry, as the Chinese were generally against teaching the martial arts techniques to non-Asians. Lee's sparring partner, Hawkins Chung, states, probably fewer than 6 people in the whole Wing Chun clan were personally taught, or even partly taught by Yip Man. However, Lee showed a keen interest in Wing Chun, and continued to train privately with Yip Man and Wang Shunlong in 1955. Wang Kamlung, a student of Wang's, witnessed a sparring bout between Wang and Lee, and noted the speed and precision with which Lee was able to deliver his kicks. Lee continued to train with Wang Shunlong after later returning to Hong Kong from America. Leaving Hong Kong after attending Tak Sun School, Lee entered the primary school division of LaSalle College at the age of 12. In around 1956, due to poor academic performance, he was transferred to St. Francis Xavier's College, where he would be mentored by Brother Edward, a teacher and coach of the school boxing team. In the spring of 1959, Lee got into yet another street fight and the police were called. Until his late teens, Lee's street fights became more frequent and included beating the son of a feared triad family. Eventually, Lee's father decided his son should leave Hong Kong to pursue a safer and healthier life in the United States. His parents confirmed the police's fear that this time Lee's opponent had an organized crime background, and there was the possibility that a contract was out for his life. The police detective came and he says, "Excuse me, Mr. Lee, your son is really fighting bad in school. If he gets into just one more fight, I might have to put him in jail." In April 1959, Lee's parents decided to send him to the United States to stay with his older sister, Agnes Lee, who was already living with family friends in San Francisco. new life in America. At the age of 18, Lee returned to the United States. After living in San Francisco for several months, he moved to Seattle in 1959 to continue his high school education, where he also worked for Ruby Chow as a live-in waiter at a restaurant. Cho's husband was a co-worker and friend of Lee's father. Lee's elder brother Peter Lee would also join him in Seattle for a short stay before moving on to Minnesota to attend college. In December 1960, Lee completed his high school education and received his diploma from Edison Technical School. In March 1961, Lee enrolled at the University of Washington, majoring in drama according to a 1999 article in the university's alumni magazine, not in philosophy as stated by Lee himself and many others. Lee also studied philosophy, psychology, and various other subjects. It was at the University of Washington that he met his future wife Linda Emery, a fellow student studying to become a teacher, whom he married in August 1964. Lee had 2 children with Linda Emery, Brandon Lee and Shannon Lee. Martial arts career. Jun-fan Kung Fu. Lee began teaching martial arts in the United States in 1959. He called what he taught Jun-fan Kung Fu. It was basically his approach to Wing Chun. Lee taught friends he met in Seattle, starting with judo practitioner Jesse Glover, who continued to teach some of Lee's early techniques. Taki Kimura became Lee's first assistant instructor and continued to teach his art and philosophy after Lee's death. Lee opened his first martial arts school, named the Lee Jun-fan Kung Fu Institute, in Seattle. Lee dropped out of college in the spring of 1964 and moved to Oakland to live with James Yim Lee. James Lee was 20 years senior to Bruce Lee and a well-known Chinese martial artist in the area. Together, they founded the second Jun-fan martial arts studio in Oakland. James Lee was also responsible for introducing Bruce Lee to Ed Parker, American martial artist, and organizer of the Long Beach International Karate Championships, which Bruce Lee was later discovered by Hollywood. Long Beach International Karate Championships. At the invitation of Ed Parker, Lee appeared in the 1964 Long Beach International Karate Championships and performed repetitions of 2-finger push-ups with feet at approximately a shoulder width apart. In the same Long Beach event he also performed the 1-inch punch. Lee stood upright, his right foot forward with knees bent slightly, in front of a standing, stationary partner. Lee's right arm was partly extended and his right fist approximately 1 inch away from the partner's chest. Without retracting his right arm, Lee then forcibly delivered the punch to his partner while largely maintaining his posture, sending the partner backwards and falling into a chair set to be placed behind the partner to prevent injury, though his partner's momentum soon caused him to fall to the floor. His volunteer was Bob Baker of Stockton, California. "I told Bruce not to do this type of demonstration again," Baker recalled. "When he punched me the last time, I had to stay home from work because the pain in my chest was unbearable." It was at the 1964 championships where Lee first met Taekwondo master Jun Do.Lee. The two developed a friendship, a relationship from which they benefited as martial artists. Lee taught Lee the sidekick in detail, and Lee taught Lee the non-telegraphic punch. Lee appeared at the 1967 Long Beach International Karate Championships and performed various demonstrations, including the famous unstoppable punch against USKA World Karate Champion Vic Moore. Lee allegedly told Moore that he was going to throw a straight punch to the face, and all he had to do was to try to block it. Lee took several steps back and asked if Moore was ready. When Moore nodded in affirmation, Lee glided towards him until he was within striking range. He then threw a straight punch directly at Moore's face and stopped before impact. In 8 attempts, Moore failed to block any of the punches. However, Moore and Grandmaster Steve Muhammad claimed that Lee had first told Moore that he was going to throw a straight punch to the body, which Moore blocked. Lee attempted another punch, and Moore blocked it as well. The third punch, which Lee threw to Moore's face, did not come nearly within striking distance. Moore, as well as many in the room that day, says Lee never successfully struck Moore, but Moore was able to strike Lee after trying on his own. Moore claims that Bruce Lee said he was the fastest American he's ever seen, and that Lee's media crew repeatedly played the one punch towards Moore's face that did not come within striking range, allegedly in an attempt to preserve Lee's superstar image. Fight with Wong Jack-man. In Oakland, California in 1964 at Chinatown, Lee had a controversial private match with Wong Jack-man, a direct student of Ma Kin-fung known for his mastery of Xing Yi Quan, Northern Shaolin, and Tai Chi Chuan. According to Lee, the Chinese community issued an ultimatum to him to stop teaching non-Chinese. When he refused to comply, he was challenged to a combat match with Wong. The arrangement was that if Lee lost, he would have to shut down his school, while if he won, then Lee would be free to teach Caucasians or anyone else. Wong denied this, stating that he requested to fight Lee after Lee boasted during one of his demonstrations at a Chinatown theater that he could beat anyone in San Francisco, and that Wong himself did not discriminate against Caucasians or other non-Chinese. Lee commented that paper had all the names of the Shifu from Chinatown, but they don't scare me. Individuals known to have witnessed the match include Catwell, James Lee, and William Chen, a teacher of Tai Chi Chuan. Wong and William Chen stated that the fight lasted an unusually long 20 to 25 minutes. Wong claims that he had originally expected a serious but polite bout, however Lee had attacked him very aggressively with intent to kill, straight from the beginning of the bout when he had replied to Wong's traditional handshake offer by pretending to accept the handshake, but instead turning that hand into a spear aimed at Wong's eyes. Forced to defend his life, he had nonetheless refrained from striking Lee with killing force when the opportunity presented itself because it could earn him a prison sentence. The fight ended due to Lee's unusually winded condition, as opposed to a decisive blow by either fighter. According to Bruce Lee, Linda Lee Cadwell, and James Yim Lee, however, the fight lasted a mere 3 minutes with a decisive victory for Lee. In Cadwell's account, the fight ensued. It was a no-holds-barred fight. It took 3 minutes. Bruce got this guy down to the ground and said, "Do you give up?" And the man said he gave up. Mental Floss magazine's Jack Rosen said author Rick Wing, a dedicated student of Wong's, presented a somewhat different account after Wing interviewed Wong and several eyewitnesses to the fight for Showdown in Oakland. The story behind the Wong Jack-man, Bruce Lee fight, Wing's book on the bout. Lee began by lashing out immediately after a handshake, cutting Wong's forehead, and then proceeded to launch a series of groin kicks and high-volume punches, most of which Wong absorbed in the chest. Wong moved laterally and was not as aggressive as the temperamental Lee. He had told his friends he wouldn't be using kicks, which he considered his most dangerous weapon, because he didn't want to permanently injure Lee. He did, however, sport a pair of leather bracelets he wore over his wrists, and one of his strikes caught Lee near his neck, staggering him. Wong followed up with a headlock, but chose not to strike while Lee was doubled over. After 20 minutes of Lee pressing the action and Wong picking his spots, Wong lost his footing and fell to the ground, where Lee tried to pounce on him. Observers told Wing they feared Lee was getting too heated and stepped in to break up the bout. A couple of weeks after the bout, Lee gave an interview claiming that he had defeated an unnamed challenger, which Wong says was an obvious reference to him. In response, Wong published his own account of the fight in the Chinese Pacific Weekly, a Chinese-language newspaper in San Francisco, with an invitation to a public rematch if Lee was not satisfied with the account. Lee did not respond to the invitation despite his reputation for violently responding to every provocation, and there were no further public announcements by either, though Lee continued to teach Caucasians. Jeet Kune Do originated in 1967. After filming one season of The Green Hornet, Lee found himself out of work and opened the Jun-fan Institute of Kung Fu. The controversial match with Wong Jack-man influenced Lee's philosophy about martial arts. Lee concluded that the fight had lasted too long and that he had failed to live up to his potential using his Wing Chun techniques. He took the view that traditional martial arts techniques were too rigid and formalistic to be practical in scenarios of chaotic street fighting. Lee decided to develop a system with an emphasis on practicality, flexibility, speed, and efficiency. He started to use different methods of training such as weight training for strength, running for endurance, stretching for flexibility, and many others which he constantly adapted, including fencing and basic boxing techniques. Lee emphasized what he called the style of no style. This consisted of getting rid of the formalized approach which Lee claimed was indicative of traditional styles. Lee felt the system he now called Jun-fan Kung Fu was even too restrictive, and eventually evolved into a philosophy and martial art he would come to call Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. It is a term he would later regret, because Jeet Kune Do implied specific parameters that styles connote, whereas the idea of his martial art was to exist outside of parameters and limitations. Fitness and nutrition. At 173 centimeters and 64 kilograms, Lee was renowned for his physical fitness and vigor, achieved by using a dedicated fitness regimen to become as strong as possible. After his match with Wong Jack-man in 1965, Lee changed his approach toward martial arts training. Lee felt that many martial artists of his time did not spend enough time on physical conditioning. Lee included all elements of total fitness: muscular strength, muscular endurance, cardiovascular endurance, and flexibility. He used traditional bodybuilding techniques to build some muscle mass, not overdone as that could decrease speed or flexibility. At the same time, in balance, Lee was careful to admonish that mental and spiritual preparation are fundamental to the success of physical training in martial arts skills. In Tower of Jeet Kune Do, he wrote, "Training is one of the most neglected phases of athletics. Too much time is given to the development of skill and too little to the development of the individual for participation. JKD ultimately is not a matter of petty techniques but of highly developed spirituality and physique." According to Linda Lee Cadwell, soon after he moved to the United States, Lee started to take nutrition seriously and developed an interest in health foods, high-protein drinks and vitamin and mineral supplements. He later concluded that in order to achieve a high-performance body, one could not fuel it with a diet of junk food, and with the wrong fuel, one's body would perform sluggishly or sloppily. Lee also avoided baked goods and refined flour, describing them as providing calories which did nothing for his body.